Hello and welcome to Dice on Ice. I am Connor and I am running with these fine folk that you can see surrounding me a Crifoth game, our 7th session of Reclamation called Gifts Ungiven. And we start ourselves off in a place of darkness, a place of tranquility, a place of silence. We hear labored breaths of those who just ran, their legs fueled only by adrenaline and what little scraps of food they had left. A small trail of blood followed this crew. A footprint, leaving behind essentially footprints, a trail of Gift's severed body. We can see 4 figures leaning against walls, sitting, their face illuminated by the small glow of a fire to give them light in this dark area. A fire dances across this glass-like marble of these labyrinthian hallways of ancient times. Bone Whisperer, you have Gift, at least you have half Gift with you. It's been a few hours since the incident where you lost her to the great maw of the of magma with a collapsing bridge prior. What do you look like? What are you doing? How are you acting? What are you saying?
Would you say that Bone Whisperer is still, like, big at this point?
I'd say it has worn off by now.
She still feels the metallic taste on her tongue from where the coin once sat. But she is no longer this giant beast. And so when she holds Gift, though her size is still dwarfed in her arms, she has her head close to Gift's, whispering, well, it's not a whisper, it's more of a series of hisses as she speaks prayers to the sands, to the sun, to nature, in her mother tongue. And then she takes a knife and slowly, almost ritualistically, she decapitates Gift. She places the body, she stands and she takes the body and she's going to place it a few paces away into the sands. She's going to leave it for those creatures who will gain sustenance from it. For she believes as people come into this world, they leave as well, and they should be useful. They should matter, even in death. And she would return to the fire, and she would begin flaying off the flesh of Gift's head, taking great care not to mar the bone, but to leave nothing behind but bone.
I feel like Zion is watching you across the flickering flame in this underground area. She whispers, not to anyone, but kind of in a hushed voice. We lost a good soul. She looks up at you, Carnage. What is Carnage? How does Carnage look? What's he saying? What's he doing? How's he acting? What's he thinking?
Carnage is staring into the fire for a long time. He watches what is essentially a gruesome scene from Bone Whisperer's side of the fire. But he doesn't cringe, he doesn't flinch. He sees this. And he looks to Zion. I was inches from saving her. Inches from saving her. It's my fault. And no matter how much magic, mysticism, whatever you want to call it, no matter how much faith you have, there's no bringing a person back from that.
In the end, Crifoth will claim us all. Do not let her weigh upon your heart. She was good, but now she is gone.
She was a child, Zion. A child that deserved a life.
We all deserve a life. We all deserve our own Zions.
It's not fair. I could have saved her.
Then why didn't you?
And with that, he looks at you and glares. And this tight ball forms in his hand. You stood by and watched her fall. You stood by and did nothing to help me save her. And you want to sit here and ask me what I did. And what
I didn't mean it like that, Carnage. I meant it more as, what could you have done in the grand scheme of things if we look as a scarbird flies? You did your best, Carnage.
You can see his whole body tensed from muscle to muscle. Every inch of him looks like he just wants to pounce and rage with nothing but unadulterated anger. Maybe at you, maybe at the situation, maybe at his own flaws. I'm gonna go be with Bone Whisperer. Anything I can do to help her, I want to. This is not right, but I owe gift that for all of my snarky comments, for all of my seeing her as lesser, she was close. I could feel it.
She had a warm heart. It was hard to see the anger and ugliness of the world when we look upon her. Innocence is rare, and Gift had it in plenty.
All I know is she would have been a better tiefling than me. I'm gonna go and see to her last rite.
And Orc, how are you feeling? Zion says to you, Gubachin. You've been silent.
Gobachun has been sitting against the side of the room, and her eyes flutter open as if she had been asleep when she's addressed. Gobachun shrugs and says, "All people, Florpahor. Does not matter if old or young. You go when the spirit calls."
And she nods. She looks at you, Bone Whisperer. Did you learn of anything down your wing of the complex before that all happened?
I forget. Did we learn anything new, or was it Tamiko and them?
That was all you guys, because Tamika was out of the game last session.
Right. Bone Whisperer is very focused on what she is doing. Her tongue flits around, kind of almost akin to when a human is concentrating and they stick their tongue out. Something, just a habit. But she finally flits one glance to Zion and just... We need to speak to the elves.
She looks puzzled. The elves?
Yes. The Ash Elves.
What do they have? What part do they have in all this?
I don't know, to be honest. But I'm hoping that they can... Well, I'm hoping that at least one can tell us. We saw some strange markings. Markings on the walls.
Well, there are many of those here. What was special about these markings?
There was an orb. And she suddenly hisses, and it sounds very guttural, very, very sudden and very loud. And she takes what is left of Gift and she holds it in her hand so that she is looking directly at it. Gift was supposed to memorize the murals and relay them. No matter We will give the information we know. That is all we can do. And she looks to Carnage. Do you have any recollection of what was on those walls? Details.
I kept an eye on the girl. I saw the carvings. I can make it out, but I couldn't necessarily read anything. So, well, we'll go with what we know. The basics. If we get there and they tell us that we're wrong, that it's a lie, then we attempt to draw it out. I've seen a number of different tieflings draw sigils before. I could try and attempt it if need be.
But Whisper would nod. It is all we can do. I'm not sure where Talli is now. Maybe a few days, week before we find him.
Zion looks puzzled. Talli? Who's this Talli?
An ash elf, who I think might help us.
So we have a lead. We have something to go on. This is good. This is good.
Something.
She's staring into the fire, poking it. This is good.
It's not much of one, so I wouldn't get your hopes up.
We found more than Goba and I did.
How did you two fare?
We heard the shaking. We felt it. And everything went dark. Only the great sounds of metal upon stone did we hear where you guys were. It was strange, the sound. The sights we saw. Luckily, we got to you in time.
Yes, I suppose so. She kind of is... You can see that her attention is already focused back onto the skull.
So we'll travel to Talli then. Once we've gathered our bearings. We'll see what that ash elf has to say about all of this.
He is one of the most knowledgeable elves I've seen. And that's saying a lot for an ash elf.
That is. And with that, this scene kind of comes to a close. We are hundreds of feet away from this place, in another dark area of this complex, this labyrinthine glass marble complex beneath the earth. Corey, tell us what your character looks like, and what they're doing in this dungeon when they hear the sound of just an earthquake above and below as stones fall and tumble as one of the harbingers awake on the surface above.
Okay. You see a figure that is seems to be searching around. Seems to be looking for things. He's well dressed, and at one point looks over their shoulder, and you see that he has red skin and horns that come off the front of his head and go straight up and go forward. He quickly looks back to what he was trying to accomplish. He doesn't look out of place. He doesn't look as if he doesn't know where he is. Almost like he's been here before. Maybe it's what he does. Maybe deep, dark places in this world. Or what this person does. It looks comfortable. Doesn't look scared. He doesn't look like he doesn't belong. And he just keeps searching.
And this tranquility, this comfort is broken, with the earth around you shaking as you hear stone split from stone. You hear the wails of thousands of tons of earth move above and below you as magma crashes through and melts and carves holes in the earth. As the glass marble of these walls cracks and splinters in places. Debris falls from the ceiling. Dust hangs in the air. A bit of this area collapses behind you as you run, escaping this landfall. And then it stops. Many moments later. And then when all became quiet once again, you hear hushed voices and the crackling of a fire. Just around the corner, you hear them. What do you do?
He's very confused. He's been in this dungeon / cave system / relic from a Aragon more than once. This cave system somewhat feels like a second home to him, maybe. And he's curious of why there's others. There's never anybody else down here. Why is there somebody in here? And he very quietly will find a darkened area and observe what he finds in front of him.
And as you peek, you see 2 tieflings, a large Suri, and an orc, and a dismembered body, blood-stained and just completely ripped apart, kind of discarded on the side of a camp. They all sit around a crackling fire. It's small. It smokes a little. It's just there for light more than warmth. They chew on rations. They sip on their skins. They seem somber and quiet. You look and you recognize one of them. You recognize one of the tieflings. The woman. You remember her. Zion. Your sister in arms. You thought her dead. But there she sits, alive, healthy, though a bit frail, a bit skeletal, intact nonetheless. You do not recognize the other 3.
Yeah, he thinks to himself, he's like, that can't be. There's no way. I've heard she was dead. She hasn't been seen in years. And he takes few moments to study their message and to be certain that he's not seeing things. Maybe it's just another tiefling that looks very similar to that person. No. Horns are the same. Facial structures exactly the same. Maybe a little bit sunken in and such. Man, she really looks like she needs to fade.
Can you make a stealth roll for me, please?
Absolutely. It is a number plus another number. Figure out what that number is. Hold on a second. It is a 10.
Goba, you hear something. The scuffing of a boot, the skid of a rock. Just a few dozen feet from this sanctuary that you've blessed. This small camp. You're not alone.
Goba stands suddenly, like my cat, and she turns in that direction, peering into the area, down into the darkness outside of the rim of our firelight. And she says, "Not alone."
Zion perks up. What is it?
I gesture towards the where I heard the sound with my stick. And I begin to walk forward a little ways to try to examine the area. Slowly walking towards it, just trying to see more as I go.
Yep, Zion follows you close behind. She has brandished her bone axe.
Bone Whisperer would look up from what she is doing, slightly interested, but she stays seated, but she is looking and checking in their direction.
And now, as she's gotten up and turned to you, you can see that this person who you thought was Zion definitely is.
Okay. As he does observe them making him per se, he casts a message to Zion. Hello, old friend. You'll never guess who's in this tavern with you today. And it's a voice that she's certainly heard before. He was her superior. It's probably shocking to have heard.
Yeah, she jumps to the start, surprised, and yells, "Who is there?"
He sends the message again. You know who this is. How have you been, old friend? You can answer me if you'd like.
And she whispers to the other two of you, Goba and Bone Whisperer. Do you hear that too?
I do not.
She focuses then, inwardly. She closes her eyes. She concentrates on the voice she heard in her head. Step out, she would message back. Step out into the light.
Again, just, repeatedly casting a spell. He's got a copper wire in his fingers that he's just kind of running back and forth, kind of like a pencil. And now would that be a very good tactic my friend. Zion.
How do you know my
who-
name?
You know who this is. Think 3 to, I don't know, 4 years, it's all blended. We've been here before, Zion. We have been here.
Incubus? She says out loud.
And all she gets is a laugh back. I heard you were dead, old friend. It's,
I thought you the same.
Your new compatriots aren't going to attack me if I do step out until late. Are they?
Just step out. We'll stay our blades.
I need to hear you tell them that.
Step out first.
And he kind of, from around the corner, which isn't very far, kind of sticks out a hand. Still the same hand that he's twirling the paper with. And maybe now he's like doing the pencil trick and he's juggling it through his fingers. It's a very large tiefling you have with you there. And he slowly appears.
And so the three of you, as Carnage comes around the corner, again, hearing this commotion, sees the blood-red skinned tiefling kind of step out into the firelight. Zion turns to the three of you, back to this figure. Meet Incubus, a fellow Blood Knight who I thought dead.
That makes 2 of us there, Zion.
It's the fate of all Blood Knights. It seems.
Yeah. Seems to be a trend when you do the job we used to do. What brings you back to these caverns?
Our mission, obviously.
I think Carnage speaks up. Zion, you have eyes on us, it seems. If what you say is true, and he's another Blood Knight, did you plan this?
I did not plan to brave the sands of Crifoth alone. No. I thought him dead, just like the rest of my Crore, Carnage.
Zion, do not lie to me.
You always think I'm lying, Carnage. When have I lied to you?
I think you lie. Because here, now, when we have just lost a fellow tiefling, when we are in mourning, now, an old friend emerges from the darkness. That is my fear.
And what, you wish the old friend stepping from the darkness to step back into the darkness? I cannot make him vanish.
No. If anything, I wish him to stride forward and meet me face to face, not hide in the shadows like a coward.
Oh, your present company is very interesting, Zion. He's like you, isn't he? Maybe on his his wishes, isn't he?
Carnage and I are nothing alike. Incubus.
There's not very many like you, as I am. And, Carnage, is that the name?
Can I hear that? Like, I'm assuming he's within
Oh,
earshot.
I'm talking.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it is. Would you like to come down and introduce yourself formally?
How coy. Carnage. Is that a description or something you chose? Or... It's interesting, tiefling names. This one here is named after a place of paradise. I'm named after a demon. Interesting, huh? And you travel with an orc and a... Wow. It's a very ragtag bunch you have here, Zion. And I do like that he's maybe up a bit from you. Yeah, I mean, and he kind of sits on the edge. Very cocky like. And in Carnage's head, with message again, need to know that you will not attack me because I don't know how well it will look out for you to this. Their fellow tiefling with a very aggressive name.
I don't hurt tieflings that don't deserve it, if that's what you're asking.
And with that, he just nods. And what of the other two of you? I know I probably have the trust of the other tiefling, the one I know. You, the orc woman, it's going to be cordial, right?
Batchoon grunts, rolls her eyes, lowers her staff, and goes, "Too many demon," and goes and turns around and returns back by the fire and sits against the wall. Talk too much.
You don't even know. And he does hop down and stroll forward directly to Zion. And as he does, he looks at the largest woman there and says, "Are you well there?" I don't know how to say that word. Is it, how do you say that race?
Sasuri?
Sorry? Okay. That's sorry.
I am very well. How are you? She says with like little to no humor in her voice. She doesn't even look up from what she's doing.
It's an interesting practice you're having right now. I am well.
You have an interesting practice on sneaking up on people.
No. I'm in the practice of delving into the dark places of the world, and this happens to be one. And I'm never here with anybody else. So I wasn't sneaking on anybody. I couldn't. Is it really? Oh no, that's alright. No, that's weird. Let me see. What? No, sorry. Okay. Yeah. I can bring it a little closer, maybe. And he continues to say, there was a third tiefling.
She was human. And you can see that Bone Whisper is just starting to cut up along Gift's forehead, and you can actually see there's these little ridges that have just pushed through the bone of the skull. She was still human.
Okay. How did she perish?
An accident.
Hmm.
With some lava.
Sounds awful.
I assume it was quite painful.
I don't know. Never asked anybody that fell in lava before. So, Zion, you're continuing the mission that is unwinnable.
If it is unwinnable, then why are you still here?
I could care less about harbingers. I could care less about anything that happens above ground. You know these caverns. Any time that we ever got to go inside someplace dark, it was always a very happy day for me. It's what I do now.
You have skills. No doubt about it. But yes, I'm continuing on the mission.
Well, how's it going?
We've learned many things. Our captain will be proud.
I know that he is dead. I was there when they put him to the ground. It's very strange. I wish I was interested in what you're doing, but I can't say that I am. You know this is a losing battle.
You still walk these halls.
Yes, the deeper in this that you get, the more treasures you find, and that is a way that I make money. I was headed in further, and then I found you a lot.
You seek treasure in a place like this. You do not seek answers, just treasure. It hurts me to hear this. It does. But me, Zion, and these three, we have taken up the mantle of what our Kror was trying to finish before our untimely demise. As part of our former Kror, I will welcome you with open arms, but it does not make me happy to have such an unmotivated person within our midst. This is our world that we live in. Our home. It is our duty to do what we can to better it. We will not hide like cowards in dank caverns beneath the earth. We'll take the fight to where the battle is. At least that's what I will do. And she looks behind her, looking at Carnage, and then to Bone Whisperer, and looks to Gobachun lastly, with kind of more of a long stare. That is what I will do. I will fight.
And we are her ever so eager sidekicks.
Wonderful. You have a squad. You always wanted to be a squad leader. So just living out the old days. That's fantastic, Scion. I'm not sure. No, I am sure. I'm very happy for you. It's, I hope that you are successful with your mission. And he looks towards the fire that is far too pitiful to even give heat or anything. And he just kind of points to it, and he uses control flames and makes it more vibrant. That should help you. It's, I'll be on my way, I guess. Unless, you need any help venturing further or getting out. I certainly know the way.
And with that, she kind of turns to the three of you, kind of trying to put you out of earshot if possible with hushed whispers. She whispers to both Bone Whisperer and Carnage and Gobachun. He's been down here for a while. That carvings that you saw, he's probably seen it already. Probably committed it to heart. The knowledge that lies locked in Gift's head seems to have found a new home. Plus, he knows the way out. He is of use to us, even if he is of an improper demeanor.
I think Carnage would look to speak up. So let me get this straight. Just let me hear this out. You would rather take a so-called Blood Knight who doesn't want to serve his cause than someone else. You realize we would be dragging nothing but a map and dead weight.
I realize this. We don't really have an option for another person. You do realize.
Yes, there are not exactly people lining up. I don't know. I kind of like him. He's realistic. And she would look to Gobachun. What do you think?
Gobachun grimaces and says, Flasok, which you recognize as talks too much.
We'll find some bounder fur for you to shove into your ears.
Fine. But you ask me, I feel like, even exiled, I'm more of a fucking blood knight than him.
Listen, he can tell Talli what we're looking for, what we saw in this place. The thing that Gift saw. The thing that Gift memorized. His use is of little to us after that. I agree. I fought with him at his side. He can handle himself. He will not be dead weight. He will not be a mumbling baby for us to have to swaddle and carry. He is formidable. Do not let his appearance fool you.
Carnage looks at you for a long time.
Fine. He steps out of line, though. He's mine.
As you wish. Zion turns to you, Incubus. Join us. Lead us out of this place. You know many secrets of this complex. You will come with us.
Okay. I will lead the way. Are you sure
I'll
you're not?
rephrase for you. We have need of you. You're useful to us. Is that better?
Is that what you all? Because from the body language of the other tiefling, I don't think so much.
He does not like you. I don't imagine he will like you. He doesn't like many of us. That is his default state.
I hate most people.
I guess it's a good thing that that's a good thing for you. It's a wonderful way to live your life.
So this place might have shifted and changed with the rock falls and other seismic activity. Our way in may not be our way out. Can you please guide us to an exit?
Absolutely. You don't want to go further in?
She looks to the three of you. You've seen all you need to see here, right? We have our lead.
I believe so. Though, might we rest here for the night, or for a bit? These old bones aren't what they used to be.
I could do that thing, Zion.
She breathes in deeply, kind of like grimaces a bit. Please don't. Not now.
But the thing is that I can tell you haven't fed well, and as the bone whisperer, as you've called her, has said, are you sure that your party wouldn't like to have a full night's rest in a far less amount of time than needed.
She kind of
Use
like
that
steps
advantage.
up to you, getting real face to face with you, kind of points a finger in your chest. Listen, they don't trust you yet. They probably will never trust you. Keep that in mind before you pull off all of your foolery and tricks. Okay? Let them begin to trust you.
And only in her head. And he casts message again and says, and you think by me giving them a whole 7 days of rest in 10 minutes is not going to be very good towards that. You're still foolish, Cyan. And he begins to kind of just walk around and sits on the ground near the fire. And he plays with it for a few minutes, casting it to his hand, kind of swirling it around for a minute, changes the color a couple times, shoots it back into the flame. 10 minutes. That's all it will take. We can sleep here for the evening and then leave. You will all feel much better. And he looks at the whole group. I can do a thing. I can do a thing that will make it so that 8 hours will feel like the 7 days in which it feels that we feel much better. Is that something you're interested in?
Zion looks to the three of you, kind of like showing with her face that this is something he's done before. Kind of like a, well, what's your answer?
Goba looks at Bone Whisperer.
Bone Whisperer would...
Trickery?
Bone Whisperer would look from Gobachin to Incubus and back. I think we shall just sleep the night. For now.
And without the invitation, Incubus begins to cast a spell. Now, for those that are watching and know the game, he'll be casting the spell Catnap, but we've modified it some because it would break Crifoth. And over a short rest, we'll get the effects of a long rest. And it takes him about 10 minutes. He is very silent, begins to stop playing with the fire. Seems as if something that soothes him. And takes the ground and plays with it for a moment and pinches a little bit of it and runs it through his fingers again, similar to what he was doing when you saw him playing with the piece of metal. And 10 minutes later, the spell is cast. And you all fall very asleep very quickly, almost uncontrollably. Incubus included.
Carnage, you're the first to awaken. And when you wake, your eyes are sharp. Your muscles are energetic. They're strong. You breathe in, breathe out, and you've never breathed this hard before. Your body feels renewed. It feels as if you've taken a long rest, which you have. You kind of stumble after emerging from such a deep slumber. You see the 4 others nestled up against whatever soft things they could find nearby, all sleeping, as they begin to wake up one by one.
I think
Carnage kind of hungrily staggers a little bit. He's been sleeping for a long time, and the effects of the feeding have long since now worn off. And he's looking around, and he looks at the other members of the party, and he looks down and he sees the broken haft of his halberd. He grabs it, kind of rolls it around in his hands, and rather than fixing the haft, I think he just begins to sharpen the blade as he sits and he watches the rest of the group, kind of watching over them. He'll just sit there quietly, but specifically, he's looking at Incubus. You invader, you blood knights are all the fucking same. Legion, blood knight, it doesn't matter. You all have an agenda, and you all intend to keep it. At the end of the day, doesn't matter what someone wants, doesn't matter what someone says. You follow your creed, don't you? Fucking wonderful.
Go, but you hear this rant from Carnage as you drift awake. And likewise do too, Bone Whisperer. And then Zion awakes, and then Incubus lastly. The fire has long sputtered out, no longer been attended to in the past 8 hours. All of you feel refreshed, reinvigorated. Your sore parts are no longer sore. Your weak bones are no longer weak. Your mind is clear and able. Zion begins to pick up her things, packing them away. Shall we go?
Yes.
I think then I will lead the way. And he does the same. He gathers the things that he took out. He, took out his bedroll and so on and so forth, and is rolling that up and putting it back in the pack that he had, and says, "Well, let's be on." Gives you all a very wry smile, knowing that he made you all feel better than you have in a very long time.
As they begin to head out, I think Carnage would walk up next to you, Incubus. I don't know how tall Incubus is, but Carnage is a fairly tall tiefling. Pretty massive. And he says to you, I don't know what game you're playing, Blood Knight, but I hope you intend to play fairly. Because if you don't, just know there are some of us who have learned to play dirty.
Oh, how fun that may be. But I have no reason to deceive any of you. Do you? Actually, I'm kind of interested. Why are you missing one horn?
I was exiled. Next question.
By who?
My tribe. I didn't agree with what they thought, and so they pushed me out.
And you were turned from a human?
Forced, rather than turned. Yes.
I hear that's awful.
Excruciating.
I've seen it happen. Us true tieflings, as I am, I pity those who have to go through that change. Very sorry for you there, Carnage.
He looks at you and he shrugs. Move on. Show us the way. And he begrudgingly just kind of quietly falls into place, not wanting to really talk to you any further.
Yeah, and he takes the cue and moves swiftly towards where he knows the exit should be.
And so Incubus acts as a guide through these labyrinthian glass marble hallways, past collapsed stone, past worn frescoes, and back around a way you've never seen before, back to that cave with the oil, where the corpse weaver once feuded with you. Back again up, following trails hidden in the cavern stone, until lastly, after hours of travel, you stand at the base of a giant hole. A hole that, when you look up, you see a great gray burning sun. The son of Crifoth, something you've never seen in a long time in your time down here. You see that 50-foot climb, or drop, I should say, that you had taken to get down here. But now it looks twice as daunting, seeing it rise instead of fall. The oil that once flowed down this place as waterfalls now only flows as trickles, as drips, as drops. Zion looks around to the four. Which of you has the rope?
I do. How do you think I got down here?
Ah, good.
Do you have another you must have entered?
And Carnage would pull out the rope that he had used originally to get us down here.
And so the ascent begins, and I feel like Zion will kind of help point you to an outcropping that you can kind of lasso with the rope. Carnage.
Yep.
And it latches on, the knot tighten, and you tug sturdy. See most of the way up there. Zion says, I'll go first. And she climbs hand over hand up this rope, bracing herself on the slick cavern wall. She finally makes it to the top. She looks around before completely climbing out, and then hops out, kneels down on the ground, looking down on the pit. The coast is clear. Come on. Let's get up. I'll help you up.
Carnage would kind of let the others take position and go up first. He wants to kind of make sure that if anything is left over in these chambers, he is kind of being the wall protecting them from any further demonic problems.
Goba, come on.
Goba ascends the rope.
And it's easy, especially with the help of Zion at the end. The oil itself is much fewer than it was before. It is a bit slick in spots here and there, but you make it up without any hassle. Bone Whisperer, hand after hand, makes it up as well. Slowly but surely, having to pause in spots. And at the very end, needs the help of both of you to climb up. And the left stands Carnaging Incubus at the base.
After you.
Oh my. That is fine. You know I'm the one that knows the way out of here, and I've led you to it. I will ensure to you that I will come with you. And do as Zion said, she is correct. I do know the murals on these walls very well. And he begins to ascend the rope.
Carnage watches him climb, kind of studying him as he does. And he begins to climb himself, following up. It feels like just a dead weight. Probably Incubus, as you're like probably halfway up, you feel the heft of this fairly emaciated tiefling's body, but he's so tall, he adds a chunk of weight to the bottom of this rope as he climbs, and yeah, he'll climb up after you and then get to the top.
Yeah.
And this, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I've just agreed.
So, after everyone emerges to the top of this pit, you look around and you can see that the scaffolding and makeshift dwellings that were once a part of this great crater have all been knocked asunder perhaps by sheer force of winds of a sandstorm, or some passing wanton brute of destruction, or something even more gruesome yet. But everything is collapsed, splintered, destroyed, shattered, burnt here in places too. A complete dismay of what it once prior. Zion collects her bearings, dusts off the sand from her knees. Good, we're all here. She packs up the rope, hands it to Carnage. She said Talli was at Redrun, right?
Yes.
I know of that place. I know of there. It's a few weeks that way. We're low on supply. We'll have to scavenge as we go.
We can do that. That's fair. But let's get going. Knowing what we found in there, the skies won't be friendly to us. We'll need to stick to the We'll need to stick to the outcroppings, never in open air.
And as you say that, a great blob of some terrible primordial beast, just tiny from this perspective, from this distance, lets out a bellow and like darts up and out in between some canyon mountains in the distance. It's just a pinprick, but you can still see that primordial flame bellow from its mouth as it disappears from view once again.
And he doesn't even say any words. He just looks at it in the distance and like nods affirmatively, like, see, that's exactly what I mean. Stay out of, just stay out of the way of those things for now. We need to figure out how to handle them before we try to take them on.
And so the boy she pointed to Redrun, unfortunately, has very little standing in the way you can see from this vantage. It is all barren open land where you can see for miles of just dunes upon cracked land, upon nothingness, upon bleakness. We'll hide wherever we can, but it's seems to be in the open for the most part. She leads the way to the village of Redrun. And so we enter the survival phase. And we'll begin with Zion as she leads the way. She's pathfinding. But she is not nearly as successful in this time around. She fails her role to pathfind effectively. It's almost as if she's as lost as everyone else. What is Bone Whisperer doing during this survival phase?
Bone Whisperer. Just gonna keep her eye out for any food, little pools of water they might come across. Maybe a small, overlooked, bubbling, muddy spring, or a small critter.
And so you forage. This will be at disadvantage. Either it's survival or nature check, please.
That's an 18.
Your knowledge of this world is great, Bone Whisperer. You know where to look, where living things hide. You can maybe even hear them with their quiet voices of their own spirits. You find 4 units of food or water, or some combination thereof in your scavengings.
She would give 1 unit to each, with the exception of Incubus. And she would try and do it quietly, not make a show of it.
And who goes next, Bone Whisperer?
I think Gobachin. She would be the last person that Bone Whisperer would kind of hand off this food to.
Gobachun is going to Gobachun is going to watch. She's going to keep guard, keep her eyes on the distance, on the skies.
So you look out for those great, terrible sky beasts, the Harbingers, as well as anything on the sands and badlands around you. Give me that perception roll, please.
That's probably not great. It's 5 on the die, so that's going to be 11.
So the sun is glaring, and it reflects off the sand, almost polished to a glass by the passing winds. It's blinding. It's hard to see beyond in certain directions, and so it's difficult for you to watch out, as nearly half of your vision is just obscured by blinding light. Who goes next, Tomiko?
I think I'm going to call up the newbie.
Or Incubus. What is Incubus doing as they travel across this Badlands?
I think that he's pathfinding. I think that he is off ahead, looking around, making sure that everything is okay, but in a very different way than Gobachun was. He surprisingly looks well prepared and not interested in foraging, not interested in scavenging anything. And he reaches into his pack a few times and takes out a flask of water, takes a couple of sips, puts it back, and he is just trying to make sure that we know our way.
All right, give me your choice of survival, athletics, or perception rolls, please, as well as paying 2 points of exhaustion.
Yep. Survival, athletics, or perception. Lovely. Those are all terrible for me. It is a 12. And you can choose either survival or perception. It's the same.
Yeah, likewise, this glare of the sun is very off-putting, and it's hard to make heads or tails of this environment. It's flat, it's featureless, hard to gain an edge in your travels when it's just an open area. And lastly, Carnage.
Carnage. Carnage is looking at his gear. He can't defend his crore with the kind of garbage gear that he now has. He has fought to the tooth and nail against these things, but this iron halberd is now snapped, and so he's going to take a minute, try to fix it up any way he can. I don't know, since they're nowhere near a forge, they're nowhere near any of that. I don't know how you want to roll
just
that.
Make me a dexterity check, no skill.
Okay, no worries.
Or survival, your choice.
Okay.
And so you use sinews of animals you've slain, perhaps even bones, stones, sticks. You lash them all together to increase the length of this haft. It's not the same way it was before of its great metal, Instead, it's now this salvaged make, but it is able to be wielded in two hands, this halberd of yours, although shoddy at best. With this survival phase comes to a close as you crest these sand dunes and see more on the horizon. And it is not what you see, for what you see is just blinding sunlight bouncing and reflecting off the way ahead of you. You hear something on the wind, something that breaks the silence of your own footsteps. You hear creaking, wooden creaking. You hear the crunching of sand a ways off. You hear a silent sound. Not that of a horse, but some other kind of animal. You hear things clanging together, ting, cling, in a rhythmic pattern. You turn to see the sound. It is a large beast, taller than any of you, even you, Bone Whisperer. Four-legged, long ears, powerful legs, a bounder. Behind that bounder is a wagon, a cart of petrified wood. You see upon its side, hanging from its sides, are polished carapaces of desert insects, painted with blues and reds and yellows ornamentation. You see other bits and baubles hanging from strings and cords and tendons from this wagon. A dark figure sits upon where the driver of this wagon would sit, with the reins in his hands. You cannot see his face or any of the other details about this person. They're headed your way in a slow, careful, yet casual plodding, one step after the other, as this bounder pulls this creaking wagon.
I have heard of these things before. I believe they're called caravans, and sometimes they offer trade. For little bits and pieces, perhaps information, but you can never be too sure here.
Now, Connor, do you think that maybe Carnage would know? I'm not sure. Maybe I don't. Would Carnage know anything about bounders? Like, would he have seen one in his travels at all?
You've most likely definitely seen one, a bounder in your travels. They're not a rare sight. They're very uncommon, but it's likely that any person's seen probably one.
And would I know?
I've at least heard about them.
My question is, I guess, would I know that they are somewhat linked to Elvish background?
Yeah, I would say that it's pretty common knowledge.
Okay. And so I think I would look to Bone.
Perhaps we should stop the caravan. If that's a bounder, he may be heading in the same direction we are.
I agree, though perhaps not all of us should approach him. And she would look pointedly at the tieflings.
And as much as Carnage wants to kind of be there as representative for you, he also gets it. So
right. I'll go make sure that we don't intervene.
I think that Bone Whisperer would look to Gobachin, just kind of asking, and then just asks quickly in Orcish, Would you like to come talk to an ash elf?
I will talk to Elf with you.
Bone Whisperer would nod and start approaching the caravan. Or the wagon.
The person pulling the reins of this wagon kind of tugs on them. The bounder stops. The wagon sits there motionless as you approach.
Bone Whisperer would actually kind of bend down a little bit more, make herself look as frail and crippled as possible. And she would approach and she would try and get an eye on the driver before saying anything.
Yeah, this driver has a thick hood, casts a long shadow over their face, as well as the awning that is above them, casts them in a shade as well from the harsh sun. It is almost impossible to see their face. You notice their hands are dark. Their hands are not fleshy. And I'd like you to make a perception roll, please.
$19.
Instead of hands, this person seems to have rubble, boulders, and branches.
Would I have heard of one of these things?
Definitely.
Okay. It is rare to see a fellow traveler to walk the wastes. It is rarer yet to see one with such bountiful supply in the open. But what is most intriguing is that we are in the presence of an incarnum.
And with a voice that is gravelier than gravel itself. We're all children of this world. But I'm not here for talks of philosophy. I'm a mere traveler, as you say. And this figure lowers their hood, and their face is missing. Half of it is gone. Just a big concavity in their face. Only half of it remains, with one orange eye that looks to you. This face, this head is made of bits of stone held together by brambles and other dried foliage. Sand and dust falls from the cracks and seams between these stones. What could old dust do for you?
My fellow travelers and I are heading to Redrun. I wouldn't suppose you'd be heading in the same direction.
The face contorts as a boulder and rock shifts, essentially furrowing his brow as he's trying to look into the sunlight. Your companions? How many?
Bone Whisperer would look myself, this orc, and 3 tieflings. We are 2 but simple travelers.
It's been a while since old Attain and I have had any guests. As this incarnate reaches forward and kind of pats the bounder on the rump, on the hind leg.
Attain. What an interesting name for a bounder. Such an odd thing for a bounder to be without its ash elf.
It's simple counting. More bounders than ash elves these days.
Ah, yes. So, are you heading to Redrun?
That is one stop in my travels. Yes. And my stony heart would be warm to have companions. Been far too alone.
Ah, fantastic. And I think at that, Bone would motion the others to come closer. But she would look to Gobachin, and in Orcish would say, "We're lucky." In these grunts that just, and it's so odd because she speaks Orcish with a Susuri accent, so it's just a very, very odd sounding language. And she says to Gobachin, "We're very lucky to have found such a rare find. We might be able to get out of the kilning while still being able to travel." And Bone Whisperer would look, while speaking to Gobachin, would be looking from Gobachin to this guy to see if there was any sense of recognition in Orcish.
I'd like you to make an insight roll, please.
16.
This Dustborn definitely responded to when you started talking in Orcish. Whether that was out of surprise or out of recognition, you're unsure. But there definitely was some kind of reaction as he, crumpled his one brow a bit, But he did not turn his head. He did not seem to cock his head to listen. You're unsure.
And so Bone Whisperer would just look to Gobachin, and still in Orcish, just before the other people come in, "It is so great that we have friends who we can trust in the wastes. They come in very short supply these days." She is just very much hoping that Gobachin catches her drift.
I'm not necessarily sure that Goba would, but Goba's going to respond back with in Orcish. "It's such good fortune to find a dust spirit on our travels, and it sounds like our presence is welcome."
Bone Whisperer would just nod, but she would be wary of the sands and the spirits that come from them. And then I think by that point the others have come, so.
So, what of your friends? Don't leave old Dusty waiting. I wish to see them.
Yeah, Bone Whisperer had waved them over, so I don't know if they would have been
So Dusty One Eye looks over each one of you with these big, gravelly blinks of this orange eye. Very well. You may join me. It would be good to have ears to listen to my stories. I'm afraid old Attain here won't be able to carry the 6 of us on this wagon. One can fit in the back. The rest will have to walk. You can take turns. But I'll be driving, as he reveals that his legs are mere stumps rather than full-fledged legs. As they're cut off about a foot or so from his waist rather than the full-fledged leg.
I think Carnage would speak up when you tell him that they have to walk. He'll look to Bone Whisperer.
I can walk. One of you take the cart.
But primarily he's looking at Bone Whisperer because out of all of us, I think Bone Whisperer is, even in her best state, still probably the most frail of all of them.
So does Bone Whisperer climb into the back of the wagon?
Yes.
And as you kind of step up, as the whole apparatus just creaks under your weight, hear the dusty voice from ahead. Mind the canvases! As you kind of step in and draw the curtain. And you see that this back of the wagon is just filled to the brim with like pottery, some cracked, some not, carved, and these great stretches of tanned canvases and these dried fruits and a plenty of supply. Like, it's beyond even reckoning how much stuff is back here. Some of it is useful, some of it's not, but all of it seems like it's been collected through trade. Nothing seems to stand out as like out of place from mere glance. You kind of have to like actually push things to the side to make a seat for yourself.
And I think when we start going, Bone Whisperer would try and strike up a conversation with him. So how long have you had Attain? It's such a beautiful bounder.
I've had Attain for 2 pilgrimages now. She served me well. I do not know how you would count them in your scaly years, or just in your scaliness. Years, seasons, suns, moons, what have you. 2 pilgrimages for me.
Yes. And how did you acquire?
From a friend. A good friend. Friends are hard to come by these days.
Indeed they are.
They've never been easy to come by, I should correct myself.
Where is this friend now?
Someplace, somewhere. It's hard to keep track of them.
I see.
Attain knows the way. She knows his smell. That's where I go now. To return Attain to him in my last pilgrimage. You see, we in Carnum are not long for this world. We fall apart the moment we come into being. He kind of lifts his hand, and literally as he does so, one of his fingers falls off. as it kind of falls lifeless to the sand below.
One Whisperer would just nod. She kind of relaxes at their conversation. She would sit back and rest in the wagon.
So the bounder kind of just plods, just slow step by step, at a mere walking pace. But it's a walking pace that you don't have to make in Bone Whisperer. As the three of you follow behind, you can find some respite in the long shadow this caravan casts. You can have to move around the wagon as the sun kind of moves in the sky, but are able to keep in the shade somewhat. And because of this segment of journey will only cost you 1 point of exhaustion and 0 for you, Bone Whisperer. As you make your way, as the sun sets, towards where this caravan driver is claiming that Redrun is. And with that, we're going to close this session as the sun finally sets below the horizon, as a coolness casts over the world of Crifoth, as people find themselves in unlikely friendly company. With that, thank you for playing this session tonight, guys. This is Crifoth, ran by Dice on Ice. I am Connor. This person is Corey. This person is Tomiko. This person is... Oh, I crossed my fingers. This person is Megan. No, Chad. This person is Megan. And with that said, Megan, will you take us the Crifoth out of here, please?